for better or worse, our industry is absolute bananas. And I think these kind of things couldn't come at a better time, because it just helps to get that balance straight. And what a better place than to have the safe space that we can be ourselves and without judgment, and chat with Heather. So for those who don't know you, Heather, would you like to introduce yourself and give your background?
Sure. So my name is Heather Perucchi. It's nice to see all of you. Happy Friday to you. Although I know in your industry, Friday is not always the end of the week. Sometimes it's the beginning of your week. I'm a licensed therapist in the state of Hawaii, and I've had the privilege of doing Monthly Mindset with you guys for a year, which is very exciting. I'm grateful to, oh, thank you, Chad. Appreciate that. I'm very grateful to come and chat with you guys every month and bring topics that I find interesting, and hopefully you find interesting, to kind of your day to day, that brings you out of your sort of standard regular practice and brings you into a little bit of sometimes introspection, sometimes considering, am I struggling with something? Am I not giving myself enough props? And so I'm just really excited and always happy to share this space with you guys. You want me to launch in, or do you have any announcements you'd like to make, Chad? Any news or anything that you need to share?
No, the only thing is, so when we first logged on, Heather said, hey, Chad, can you speak up? I can't hear you over your shirt, or something like that, right? Is that what you said? I'm just kidding. She didn't say that.
But, I literally said, that's a shirt.
I said, yes, it is. It is a shirt. No, but by all means, it's the floor is yours. Take it away.
Awesome. So in the spirit of the new year, and a lot of us sort of consider the year turnover kind of a blank slate or a sort of fresh start. Sometimes we get inspired to make changes or set goals. I don't love the word resolution, but just so you guys know, you can set a resolution on any random Tuesday or Thursday throughout the year that you would like. But in the spirit of the beginning of the year, we are going to talk a little bit about intentions. So we talk a lot about how we set intentions and why we set intentions. And sometimes we talk a little bit about how to. I think, so for today, we're going to do something a tiny bit different than we usually do. Rather than just me sort of talking at you the whole time, we are going to do a little bit of self-reflection. So I'm going to lead you through just a short, non-intimidating, maybe 10-minute reflection to help you guys find the space to be able to set intentions for yourself. So as I usually do, I'm going to share a little story with you, but my year has started off quite rocky. I have been sick for about 2 weeks. I finally have sort of turned the corner and I'm feeling much better. But for those of you that know, talk therapists spend about 90% of their time talking and or listening. And I dealt with a bout of laryngitis for 5 days. So not only did I feel bad and, sort of worn down and tired, I couldn't talk. And so I couldn't engage with my people the way that I'm used to engaging with them. And I found it really frustrating and found myself sort of like spiraling into this, negative mindset and this idea that like, oh, I can't control anything. And so I took that time to sort of revamp how I present my clients and the folks that I train with how we set self-intentions. And so rather than sitting in my pile of garbage and feeling bad, I decided to sort of like flip my mindset a little bit and revamp this starting self-intentions. And then I thought, what a perfect time to share it with all of you since we're meeting for Monthly Mindset. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how we set intentions and why we set intentions. It's a slight curve from what I sent to Tyler to tease you guys with, but I figure you're all pretty forgiving, so you'll let me kind of have it. So let's set a little bit of an intention for today. It's basically self-interactive. So I'm going to lead you, but we are going to have a little bit of a sort of dynamic self-discussion about how we set an intention and why. We're going to try to come away from today with a little bit of what we call experiential learning. So I'm going to lead you through a small exercise on how to focus on yourself first. So doing the internal work that helps us have a greater impact on our external world. So when we do that, we want to first sort of take a step all the way back. Sometimes we physically take a step back. And then we talk about and think about and consider the task that we have in front of us, whether that's a personal task or a professional task. And then we want to talk about, as a third layer, the sort of impact on our community at large, whether that's your workplace, your family, your greater community where you live, your neighborhood. And then we want to, while we take that giant step back, we want to really recognize and acknowledge that this time in our world, this time of, using terms like pandemic, this time of, do I have COVID? Do I not have COVID? Do I have the sniffles? Do I have allergies? Do I have the flu? This is temporary, but 2 years ago, we talked about it in like a 6-month temporary and then a year temporary. And so we're sort of weathering this ongoing extra pressure that comes from our sort of nation and our world. And so what we consider normal or what we consider typical may not look like what was typical 6 months ago or a year ago or 2 years ago. So as we hold space with each other today, let's make sure that we're allowing ourselves a little bit of grace around the expectations that we have of ourselves. So if our intention feels small, that's cool. We can acknowledge that it feels small, but we can also acknowledge that small things have just as much and sometimes more power than what we think might be like big goals or more productive goals. So as we consider today and as we spend this, 55 minutes together, let's try to give ourselves a little bit of a break from the sort of normal kind of rat race pressure that we put on ourselves to do and be everything for everyone. So the practice of setting intention is all about our wellness. And many of us think that wellness is really mostly related to our physical self. But in doing research around wellness, it's many more things aside from just feeling well physically. So wellness is defined as, if you ask Google, the state of being in good health, especially as an actively pursued goal. So rather than focusing on the beginning of this sentence, the state of being in good health, which would make us assume it's our physical health, let's focus on the second part of this statement, which is an actively pursued goal. So if you parallel this with kind of your regular day-to-day task management, however you do that, we've talked about that a lot in the past. Wellness is something that you actively pursue by setting an intention and then following through on that intention. But I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench into that. When we talk about wellness, there's actually many dimensions of it. So while we assume that wellness is really just how we feel physically, there's actually 7 studied dimensions of wellness. There's your physical. Do you move throughout the day? Do you eat food that fuels you in a productive way? Do you spend time out in the sunshine, getting vitamin D and filling your body with the nutrients that it needs? There's also your social wellness. How connected are you to your community? How much do you understand what feeds you socially and how you feed your community? Sorry, a little lingering. There's your emotional wellness. So how well do you feel about yourself? How satisfied do you feel? How fulfilled do you feel in your day-to-day? There's your spiritual wellness. So if you practice a faith or if you practice a universality, how connected do you feel to the practice of that spiritual endeavor? Your environmental wellness. So do you live in a place with toxic air? Do you live in a place with toxic people? Do you live in a place where there's mold growing in your walls? Or do you live in an environment that supports you and creates a healthy space for you to exist in? Then there's your occupational wellness. And how fulfilled and satisfied are you in your career path? How much does your job speak to you? How do you feel when you go home at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, depending on your shift, and feel excited about what you're doing and how you're spending your time? And then my favorite one is your intellectual wellness. How stimulated do you feel by your process of learning? Are you continuously understanding yourself and your environment in a different way ongoing? So as you can see, or as you can hear, these 7 dimensions can feel super overwhelming. Like, how are we supposed to focus on all of this all the time, every day, all day? Well, you're not. So keep in mind that these are things that are actively pursued, but they're not things that you need to actively pursue every minute of every single day. So if you go towards the physical wellness dimension, I use the Muncie Journal for this one, but wellness is defined as an active process of making choices towards a healthy and fulfilling life. So that may have nothing to do with your physical wellness and nothing to do with your emotional wellness, but everything to do with your environmental and occupational wellness. So this process doesn't look the same for every single person. It's a very, very sort of dynamic and independent, individualistic approach to figuring out how we become fulfilled and connected to ourselves. So as we sort of do the very, very first primary step in this, and we're going to revisit this in future mindsets, let's just be realistic about the amount of information that we can shove into our brain in 55 minutes to have a lasting effect. So try not to take on all 7 dimensions today and set 7 goals that might end up with some disappointment on the other side. So the first step in setting an intention is to set an expectation. I have a couple of tips for you when you set an intention. One is, once you decide what your intention is, set it and then make it habitual. Forget it. Do one thing that creates this sort of ongoing snowball effect in your day-to-day. The easiest example that I can come up with is, let's say you set a goal to move your body for 20 minutes a day. And maybe in the grand scheme of physical wellness, that feels like not enough. But in the spirit of setting realistic expectations and intentions, we're going to set this goal and we're going to forget it. Every single day, we're going to calendar 8 o'clock in the morning and we're going to walk outside for 20 minutes, whether it's raining, sunny, hot, cold, although it doesn't get very cold here, but we're going to do that every single day. So as you set your intention becomes part of your regular day-to-day. And then sometimes we have to consider something that is easier than challenging ourselves with every single aspect of our wellness. So the reason that we set 20 minutes is because 20 minutes feels like nothing. It's literally a blip in your day. So rather than I'm going to go to the gym 6 days a week for an hour and a half and do this really crazy lifting plan that I paid $100 for, we're going to set an intention and an expectation that's super easy and relatively seamless, i.e. we're going to get up, we're going to put our walking shoes on, we're going to go walk for 20 minutes, and that's going to be enough. And we're going to give ourselves props for doing that. And then when you set your expectation, make sure that it's so simple that it's all you have to do is implement it every day. It's barely even a decision that you have to make. And so as you set this intention, whatever this is, and we're going to do a little exercise that will help you with that, we're going to make it realistic, we're going to make it relatively easy, and we're going to make it simple. And then for those of you that were part of the work-life balance mindset that we did, you guys know that I think work-life balance is kind of a crock, that sometimes work is going to demand 90% of your time and your home life is going to get no percent of your time. Sometimes your home life is going to demand 95% of your time and work life is going to get just neglected. And we have to be able to kind of ebb and flow with how our life changes on a week-to-week basis. So what we're going to do is focus on setting an intention that creates the ability to disconnect when we're away from work. Sounds easy, right? So what do? Well, the first thing we're going to do is find a comfy spot in your chair. We're going to plant your butt into the bottom of your chair. And if you can, you're going to plant your feet on the ground. My feet barely hit the ground in this particular chair that I'm sitting in. So I'm going to focus on my butt sitting in the very, very back of my chair with my back set right against the backboard. So we're going to spend about 5 minutes. You can close your eyes. You can put your hands in your lap. You can turn your video camera off. You can do whatever you need to do in order to help yourself be present. But we're going to do a present-minded activity. So I am going to close my eyes because it's easier for me to lead you if I don't see all of you. But the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take 2 really deep breaths that go all the way into our belly. So sit with your butt on the chair, put your hands in a comfortable position. And I want you to take a breath in for 7. I want you to hold that breath for 4 seconds. And then I want you to exhale for 8. It's called 4-7-8 breathing, or it's called 7-4-8 breathing. So we're going to go in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to hold 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We're going to repeat that in for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then we're going to do one on our own. So as you continue your breathing, I want to explore and consider what the last 14 days have looked like. Today's January 14th. So we turned over a new year 14 days ago. We had to think about the things that you've done over the last 14 days. Maybe you have worked. Maybe you took a little time off and you had some vacation. Maybe you spent some time with family or with friends that have become family. I want you to just consider how you've spent the last 14 days. These are all very logical, practical memories. So we're just thinking about things that we've done. Maybe you reconnected with someone. Maybe you disconnected from someone. Maybe you have already done some intention setting. Maybe you have gotten a lot of practical things done, or maybe you've avoided practical tasks. But I want you to think about the last 2 weeks. And as you think about those things, I want you to consider what's maybe been missing from those last 14 days. Maybe you set a physical wellness goal and you haven't been able to make and create the time in your schedule. Maybe you intended to have a conversation with someone that might be difficult. You weren't able to do that. We're just talking about the last 2 weeks. So we're not trying to recall long-term memories. We're not trying to put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We're just letting our thoughts kind of roll into our brain, things that we've done. Maybe you traveled. Maybe you took a road trip. Some of us are limited in where we can road trip to. And then I want you to think about the things that you could have done that you didn't do. So times when you set an intention and that intention felt too difficult. Maybe you got together with someone that you wanted to have a conversation with and that conversation didn't happen. Maybe you meant to sit down with your boss and talk about your roles and responsibilities. You haven't been able to do that yet. Maybe you've completely kicked ass at your goals and the things that you set on January 1st or January 2nd, you've knocked it out of the park. I want you to sort of finish this little brainstorm. It might feel a little chaotic, and that's okay. There might be lots of thoughts rolling around in your brain. There might be only one or two. It's okay. Your experience is your experience. And I want you to take 2 of those super deep breaths before you kind of open your eyes and rejoin. And then as you do that, and as you open your eyes, I want you to write down something that stuck out to you during that time. It's okay if it's nothing, but I want you to think about one thing that you wish you would have done, or one thing that you did do that you're really proud of. And I want you to sort of jot that down or type it into your phone, type it into your notes app. And then as you rejoin us, you're welcome to put your video cameras back on. You're welcome to leave them off. It's totally up to you. But we're going to use this practice and this exercise to create some space for you to set an intention as of today. So come on back. For those of you that are still looking at the screen, this is a picture of my dog. Whenever I have a tough time, I often put pictures of them on my phone or on my computer because they bring me back to a place where I find a lot of joy. So during that exercise, the number one thing that popped into my head is that I'm really proud of this 20 minutes outdoors goal that I set for myself. And what I've done during that 20 minutes is no headphones, no phone. I've just kind of leashed up my dogs and taken them outside and enjoyed the sunshine and allowed myself to have that in the mornings because it helps me to ground my day. And I'm wondering if anything came up for any of you that you want to share with the rest of your team. I would love to hear about anything that came up if you want to. I'll give you a minute or two. And if you don't, that's okay too. There's never pressure. Okay. So as you consider this thought, so we're going to use my 20 minutes a day. One of the things that I had to consider when setting this goal was my why. Why do I feel like it's necessary for me to start my day with something like getting outside? Well, one is the more that I spend time outside. Yes, Steve, it's kind of amazing. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit because I know I dropped it like a little nugget. But the one thing that I decided was if I start my day by going outside and there's no way for anybody to contact me or connect with me, it really is forcing me to spend time with my own brain. And sometimes I don't think about anything when I walk them. Sometimes I think about how sunny it is outside after we had like literally a whole week of straight rain. Sometimes I think about, wow, I really wish I would have brought my phone because I need to send a text message to somebody or I need to check an email. But what I did was I set the intention of 20 minutes outside with no headphones because I didn't want anything distracting me from the actual practice of mindfulness. And so the reason behind the no headphones is if I leave my house and I put my headphones in and I hit play on a podcast, yes, I'm learning something. And absolutely there's a benefit to that. But I'm also distracting myself from the things that are trying to get through to me. And so what I realized was I didn't necessarily need just the management of that time. I needed to manage the boundary around that time. So it wasn't just about moving my body for 20 minutes. It was actually about removing my brain from the static of my everyday and creating space where I could literally just be mindful in the moment that I'm in. So that was my non-negotiable, was taking the headphones out of my ears. I don't even bring them with me. If somebody were to call me and for some reason my watch were to buzz while I was out because I was randomly connected to Wi-Fi or something, I just ignored it. So creating that space allowed me to adhere to this intention that I set on January 1st of I'm going to spend 20 minutes of mindfulness every single day, but it took me away from doing it in my house with a bunch of distractions. So sometimes when you're creating this idea of balance or this idea of setting an intention, it's about considering things other than just the time that it might take. It's about considering the boundary that you have to make in order to create that space and actually follow through on it. Okay, so now what do we do with that? Well, the first thing that we have to do is take some sort of step. And so when we talk about creating an action plan, it doesn't have to be 365 days of mindfulness. It doesn't have to be 365 days of 20 minutes of meditation every day with no excuses. It does have to consider what it looks like to create balance and practice care of the self for you. And what it looks like for me may not look like what it looks like for Chad or for anyone else in this room. It just has to create a meaningful opportunity for you to create time and carve out space in your day that can create refreshment for you. And it might not feel refreshing every day. Some days it might feel like a huge annoyance because you scheduled an appointment an hour earlier than you're used to, and now you have to sort of rush through your mindfulness. But if we create the space to do this regularly and we build off of this one intention, it sets the stage to avoid things like burnout, things like feeling overtired all the time, things like feeling like we're overcommitting and overindulging our schedule. So as you consider that exercise that we did and the things that sort of stuck out to you, the intention that you'd like to set, the theme of your thought processes, because if your theme was, I never do anything right, we need to flip that 5-minute practice into creating an opportunity to come away from that sort of constant negativity against yourself. So we're going to set the intention to try and work against that and build something that we would consider more kind of on the positive side of the spectrum. So if your intention is, we continue to use my example, if your intention is to spend time outside of your regular rat race and the constantly being connected and the constantly checking email and the constantly checking text messages, you have to consider what a realistic creating space might look like, because it's probably not going to look like an hour of free time every day right away. We're going to want to create a really small piece of that. Like maybe it's walking around the block, or maybe it's turning all your electronics off for 10 minutes. So the number one thing that we want to concentrate on is one sort of resounding theme that we'd like to focus on, what it looks like to create a realistic intention from that, and then what it looks like to put that into your schedule without creating opportunities for you to feel overwhelmed. Because what we don't want to do is add to your schedule. So I'm not really sure where I found this quote, but the thing that really stuck out to me was you really do have time in your day, and you can make time for things that you prioritize. However, it doesn't mean that everything can be a priority. So when we think about, hi Kona, when we think about the things that are important to us and the things that we absolutely want to prioritize, we have to recognize that not everything that we do in our day-to-day can be a priority. Sometimes things have to fall away. And so I think I shared this with you guys last time, but when I sit down the night before or the morning of my day, I use the 6-task method because that's what's proven most effective for me. And every day I come up with 6 tasks and I prioritize them by importance of top 3 and bottom 3. And the top 3 are the non-negotiable tasks that have to get done that day. For example, today I have 3 assessments that I have to write and send in because they were actually due yesterday. So those are my top 3 non-negotiable priorities. The next 3 are things that I would love to finish today, but may not actually get completed. However, my number 1 priority for the day was to get outside for at least 20 minutes. And even though I slept in a little bit late today, I did get up and I did get out and I did get my 20 minutes of sunshine without my phone and without my headphones. So I've checked my number 1 priority off of my task list for today. And then after our mindset, I'll get started on my top 3 priorities. So in doing that and in finding that as the process that worked for me, I had to recognize that not all 6 of those things could be non-negotiable because there just really aren't enough hours in the day. I shared this with you guys last time we did a wellness discussion, but this little kind of box helps me take a look at my commitments and prioritize them. So things that are low priority, but we spend a lot of time on are what we would consider things like time wasters. So for me, when I worked in an office, my time wasters were chatting with my coworkers for longer than I needed to. Those were low priority things because we weren't talking about things that were necessarily important for the day, but I was spending a lot of time doing that because I was likely avoiding things that I didn't want to do. So when you look at the things that are on your current calendar and the commitments that you've already made, it can be helpful for you to recognize the things that you spend a lot of time on, but that don't provide you with a lot of fulfillment, therefore being low priority. So this one good example that a client of mine shared with me not that long ago was, I spend a lot of time playing games on my phone. And I said, oh, what's a lot of time? And he said, probably 2 to 3 hours a day. And I said, wow, that does seem like a lot of time to be doing something that doesn't create a whole lot of enjoyment, fulfillment, excitement for you. It sounds like you are using that more as an escapism tactic. He said, yeah, I do think that, but I do enjoy them. I just really only enjoy them for maybe the first 20 or 30 minutes. And so over time, we tackled that 3-hour block of time that he was using in a lot of time spent, but low priority, and sort of carved other things into that time instead of just playing games. So he would play the game for an hour and a half, and then he would go do something else. His other thing was riding his bike. So he would avoid riding his bike, even though he loved it, because he was sort of stuck in this escapism mindset playing this game. So we shifted the thing that he was spending a lot of time on that didn't give him a whole lot of fulfillment, and slowly built in an opportunity for him to create the space to do things that he does enjoy. So here's your ongoing kind of thought challenge for this intention practice. The interesting thing about when we set an intention, and especially kind of in the beginning of the year, and when we're trying to do things that create more health and wellness, maybe create more wealth, maybe create more connection, maybe create more goal setting opportunities, we want to consider that one small step that impacts the greater good. So for me, again, getting out and getting some sunshine in the morning helps set the tone for my day. I have heard that people who go out at lunch, it creates an opportunity for their brain to feel fired up for the afternoon. So your small step may be a walk after you eat lunch. Some people love to work out at night, and they end up feeling like they look forward to that all day long, and their day ends up being more positively centered because they're looking forward to that for the entire day while they're working. And so as you consider those small steps, you also can consider where in your day-to-day that change can be inserted to be able to implement or influence this process to make it slightly easier for you. So what we don't want to do is make a goal to get up at 4:30 every single day if you normally sleep till 8, because that may actually be the barrier that prevents you from being able to implement that small change. And then, is there somebody else that I need to make this happen? For me, my spouse will always tell me, go out, you know, it makes you feel better when you do. Go out, you know, if you make the time to do that, you'll feel more ready for your day and more prepared to be really present with the people that you're spending time with today. So for me, my spouse helps me do that. It could be a friend that you walk with. It could be somebody that at lunchtime every day comes to your office and says, it's time to go. We're not going to sit and eat lunch at our desk. And then if there's any accommodations that need to be made for you, like, do you need to buy a pair of walking shoes? Do you need to buy a pair of really cute yoga pants to be able to go walking in? Do you need to buy a planner that helps you with your goal setting? Because every day it excites you to open up to a clean page and have a goal setting sheet. Do you need to reconnect with somebody at your church or your place of worship that will help you set the intention of attending church more often? Do you need to buy a new book because you want to increase your intellectual wellness? So sometimes there's accommodations that you need to make that will help set the stage for you to be successful. And then lastly, instead of adding something to your schedule, I will challenge you to think about replacing something in your schedule. So for me, I'm replacing sitting and scrolling on my phone in the morning and, you know, checking social media and maybe kind of rolling through my emails a little bit. I replaced doing that in the morning with getting outside. And what that has also helped me do, speaking of kind of snowballing and habit building, it also helped me to start to read a little bit more in the morning because I added a little bit of reading on the other side of that walk. And so I didn't actually add anything to my schedule. I just took this chunk of time that could be considered wasteful or could be considered distracting and replaced it with something that created an opportunity for my brain to be well in a different way. So I might challenge you, instead of thinking about, oh my gosh, I have to add something to my already busy schedule, maybe we think about replacing something that's in your schedule that is less effective or less efficient for you. So as I sort of open it up for us to chat about what this looks like ongoing, there's a couple of encouragements for you. The number one is, and as I've always believed, all of you are very strong and very capable folks, and you can do this. The really tricky thing about setting an intention is, one, identifying that intention, because a lot of us think it's automatically like physical wellness or I need to read more. But it could actually be that you want to connect with your partner more every day, or you want to engage with your community more, or you're looking for more responsibility at work, or you're considering a promotion. So remember, the intention isn't always about adding something to your schedule, but it's also not always about, this sort of stereotypical intention that most folks set. Sometimes the thing that we need to do is completely different than what somebody else is doing. So piggybacking off of that, creating routine really does create that feeling of calmness. So a routine doesn't have to be every single day like clockwork, but it does need to be shifting that habit and that intention so that you're prioritizing it before you start your day. Maybe before you go from work to home, maybe you stop and you take your 20-minute walk somewhere halfway between your office and your house. Although I think a lot of us are still kind of working at home, but it doesn't have to be every single day the same thing week after week. Sometimes it can be on Sundays, we go to our place of worship, or on Saturday mornings before we start running errands and cleaning the house, I sit and I read for 20 minutes because I'm interested in learning more about mindfulness, or learning more about setting habits, or learning more about emotional wellness or emotional intelligence. And then you have each other. All of you sitting in this room can create accountability for each other. So if you are brave and you feel like you want to introduce an accountability partner into your day to day, ask someone for help, or have a conversation with somebody who can provide you with either some kindness or a listening ear around the intention that you're setting. I know through my monthly mindsets and my talking with some of the KW employees, you guys really do create an environment of growth and an environment of finding ways to continually improve on yourselves. And so I know that there are relationships within KW that can create accountability, but can also do it in a very respectful and kind way. So be realistic about what you can do. Try not to add those completely unrealistic, out of the box expectations right away. Maybe there's time for that a year from now or 2 years from now. But instead of adding something to your schedule, try replacing or try subtracting something from what you do in your day to day. Because I think that what happens when you start to replace things is you start to recognize in that 4-section box the things that you were spending a lot of time on that maybe aren't as effective for you or aren't as impactful for you. So maybe in your replacing or your subtracting, you actually find spots where you were using time in an ineffective way. Okay, so now that I've thrown a bunch of information at you, and I see that somebody in the chat is offering themselves as an accountability partner to someone else, so that's amazing. Way to get it going. I would love to hear your sort of initial reactions or your thoughts on this idea of setting these sort of simple, easygoing intentions, or seemingly simple, easygoing intentions, and maybe what you're going to start doing, or who wants to be accountability partners.
I have a comment. I like the 6 tasks. So you have your 3 non-negotiables, and then your 3 that you don't necessarily have to get done. But yeah, just knowing that the top 3, and it might be starting off, with the gratitude and the self-care, walk outside, whatever, but that's like the number 1, because you can't do the other 5 unless, you've made your self-care, taken care of. So that was just kind of a good way to set it for me, outline it.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely didn't come up with that. That's not my brilliance. I learned it from Googling, how do I manage my day to day? But I think what's really interesting about that particular approach is that if I finish those 3 things, then I'm done. If it's noon, cool, then the rest of the day is like my oyster to play with. And
Seems
if I choose,
easier.
yeah, if I choose to do those other 3 things, fantastic. Then I've like totally set myself up for the next day, or if it's a Friday or whatever day you end your week on, then I've ended my week on this like really amazing, productive note. My biggest challenge, well, one, I have a couple, but one of my biggest challenges is that I just want to do everything. Like I find so many things interesting and I find so many people interesting that my answer is almost always going to be yes, absolutely. And then when I get to that event or I have to turn in 75 pages of policies and procedures that I agreed to write for somebody that I shouldn't have, or, whatever, I'm like, why did I say yes to this? Like, I don't have the brain space to be able to do this. And so, one of the things that has come up for me a lot in the last 14 days and kind of was resonating while we were doing the exercise is this idea that I don't have to say yes to everything just because I find it interesting. That I can find it interesting and still say it's not really the time for me to commit to something like that. And so, actually, my resolution or my agreement with myself for this year is to actually take 24 hours before I make any sort of decision, whether that's an individual therapy client or a new contract or working with an agency. No matter how much I love their mission, how much houselessness they're going to solve, how much severe and persistent mental illness they're going to tackle, I'm going to take 24 hours before I say yes or no to anything. So the 6-task method has been really helpful in sort of managing those expectations of myself. Thank you, Rachel. That was good feedback. Anybody else have thoughts? Got a quiet crowd today, Chad.
Hi, Heather. It's Anne. Nice to see you.
Hi, Anne.
Hi. I just wanted to say, for me, I'm a lot like you, where I just want to do everything and get involved with everything. So when you talk about the 7 dimensions of wellness, I'm looking at it, and because I'm going through the One Thing book again, just trying to
nice.
pick out the one thing that would help me. But as you were talking, I think I need to dial it back and just say, okay, what brings me the most joy, and do that first and then add to that, because otherwise I'll just start going off on a tangent and just start picking things and getting involved in things that maybe I thought would bring me joy, but then turns out to be the opposite or becomes something that will bring me anxiety. So that's just kind of where I share that,
Yeah. And I see the parallel, right? Because, and one of the things I could encourage you to do a little research on if you want is people pleasing, because we assume that people pleasing is about making other people's life easier, but people pleasing is actually quite layered. And, I've been a recovering people pleaser for many, many years. And it's not because I think that I owe anything to anybody else. It's not about the obligation so much for me. It really is that I find so many things interesting that I want to bring my talents to other people's stuff because I feel like it can be beneficial. And so my people pleasing actually comes from, I think I can help, as opposed to I feel obligated to. And so when I started to study people pleasing, I realized so much of my urgency to say yes to people came from feeling like my talents would be well used, which then stems from, confidence and stuff from childhood and all this other kind of stuff. And you can go on a whole journey with that. But I think even if you find something really interesting, and you can actually simplify this to social situations, right? For those of us that are introverted extroverts or extroverted introverts, you can say, oh my gosh, thanks for the invitation. Let me check my calendar and I'll get back to you. And I can't think of anybody that would be offended by you not agreeing to do something right away. And then maybe you look at your calendar and like, wow, I do have a lot of obligations that weekend or that day. I think this is going to be something that I might want to take a step back on, or maybe want to say no to. And then you can go back and say, at this time, this isn't something that I'm able to prioritize, but please keep me in mind for next time. And it becomes this respectful exchange of, I'm going to set my boundary without insulting or feeling like you're making a hasty decision or agreeing to something that you, in the end, are going to feel kind of more stressed out from. It's a really good point.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Anne.
I think Sam has a question.
I just wanted to ask for accountability partners, if there are any like tips you have beyond maybe like setting schedules to meet each other, or just the basic of telling each other what to do, if there's anything that could help either myself or my accountability partner feel more obligated to do what they say they're going to do, if that makes sense.
You mean, how do you find an accountability partner that will actually help you stay accountable and be accountable to being an accountability partner? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Well, there's a couple of approaches. One is someone who's value aligned with you, right? So it's going to be difficult if you have an accountability partner whose intention is vastly different than yours. So it's going to be hard if you want accountability to go to church on Sunday mornings and the other person wants accountability to walk every day. So one is kind of value aligned and goal aligned. That could make it a little bit easier because there's a little more simplicity around that. The second is to have a really honest conversation about what your expectations are. And this actually sort of feeds the spectrum of communication. But when you have an accountability partner, it is very helpful if you set the expectation that you have of them in the very beginning. So for example, I said to my spouse, I want to spend 20 minutes outside every day. And he said, okay, how can I help you stay accountable to that? And I said, well, on the mornings when I'm going to not do that, or I'm feeling like I'm rushed or I'm not prioritizing it, I need you to say to me, babe, you agreed to 20 minutes, so go. And he now knows exactly what he's supposed to say. And I now know that I asked him to do that for a very important reason. So if you set the expectation will likely be met. If you just say, I need you to help me walk every day, and you don't tell that person how you need that communicated to you, it's going to be difficult for them to communicate in a way that you need to be communicated with, as opposed to the way that they would prefer to be communicated with. This works really well for conversations in the workplace too. So just to give you a second layer to your question that you asked, but didn't ask this specifically, when you have a meeting with somebody, go into that meeting and say, okay, so today we're going to cover this and this. Is there anything else that we need to cover? And if that person says, oh yeah, we need to do this too, then write those 3 things on a whiteboard or a piece of paper, and then talk about those 3 things. Same as the 6 task idea, right? Once we get those 3 things, if we still have time, fantastic. If those 3 things are done and we're going to move on to something else, fantastic, conversation over. So setting that expectation can be really helpful for you to feel like you can count on them to get what you need from that accountability relationship. Great question. Fantastic question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. It took me 25 years to learn the expectation setting, but listen, it's working out really well.
Love that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else have question or thought, or want to share their intention so people can walk by them in the office and say, remember how you said you were going to do that? How's it going?
Okay, I'm gonna share something.
Awesome.
So you know, like how we all wake up in the morning and then we go straight to the phone and checking the social media and the emails and all of that. And you know, like how they said like you have to set up your set your day the right way. So what I started doing it is instead of checking all the stuff, you know, I go straight to the YouTube and I'll listen like a gratitude meditation stuff, like, you know, constantly reminding you. So it's been really good. So at least like 20 minutes in the morning, I'll listen.
Just
I'm
like
getting
while
ready.
you're like laying in bed, while you're like sort of getting out of bed.
So yeah, as soon as I get up, like I just put it on, and just when I'm getting ready,
I love
listen.
that.
Yeah, it's really good.
What an incredible way to set the intention without having to consciously think about setting the intention, right? Like you literally just open up your phone and hit play. And then all of those words are the first thing that your brain absorbs in the morning. And then you carry that with you for the rest of the day. Oh, it looks like you have, nice, Jocelyn. That must be why they invented waterproof speakers, right? So you can listen to your gratitude and thankfulness in the shower. That's awesome. I love that you aren't doing something that's so specific that you can get tangled in it, right? It's literally just opening up a video and hitting play and then letting it play while you're doing other things. I think that's great.
I guess I'll share some facts I shared.
Awesome.
I set a new intention for 2022 is that before real estate, I was studying multiple languages every day of the week so I could be better at communication with any walk of life. So now I'm like, for January, I have studying French so I can have a French luncheon with an old coworker from KW. So that's my goal for February. Every month I have a different language I study before bed. So no matter who I'm speaking with, personal or professionally, hopefully the language barrier is not an issue. And I'm listening to it on my way to showing, so learning French or whatever while I'm in the car, so I'm not just listening to music anymore.
I love that.
So hopefully by end of 22, 12 languages, but I think that's just a crazy goal I have.
So not only are you listening to gratitude and things that are affirming you in the morning, you're also learning French so that you can be a more well-rounded agent and friend. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I figured like, because I've been listening it while I sleep. I found on YouTube you can learn French while you sleep. So I figured something different at night to calm my mind down, but maybe it will help.
I love it.
I wanted to share something. So this morning I got up and I immediately went to my phone, but I had set the intention of wanting to change up my morning. And so I took my coffee and I went outside into my garden space and I took my journal and I literally just sat with my face to the sun for a good 5 minutes and just felt the heat on my body and my face and just being present in that moment, because I'm always in the house and surrounded by electronics. So it felt really good to just be present and feeling the sun and just feeling the heat and the grass and the dew. And I spent maybe a minute watching this honeybee try to land and like clean off pollen. And in that minute, I was just so focused on watching this honeybee that it really took me away from all the chaos that's just going on in my life right now. I mean, I have family that have been in close contact with COVID. And so there's just lots of this like anxiety and worry and just like, I'm the only one that's able to go out and do the errands. So it's just been a lot of family first balance for me. And it's allowed me to be grateful for the fact that I chose this career to be able, if I needed to, drop everything and be that person that my family can rely on. And I'm talking grandparents and my sisters and my mom and my dad. And that filled my cup to be able to just sit in my garden and just be grateful for life as it is.
And now every time you feel that pull to like roll over and grab your phone, you can think about that honeybee, and that honeybee, I can like picture you sitting and watching this happen. And it's not an hour of mindfulness practice. It's like I'm going to feel the heat of the sun. I'm going to watch this honeybee, and then I'm going to go about my day. And your day may be just as stressful as any other day, but you started it in a way that shifted that stress for you. So I think I might channel that honeybee a little bit too. So thank you for sharing that visual with us.
That was great. That was awesome.
Anybody else have any final thoughts?
Can I share something? So
Please.
one of the things that was really big for me is that I get caught up in my work a lot. So, I didn't intend to come into real estate so that my wife can be second, So I had to sort of be mindful about boundaries and also taking care of myself and having a moment for myself. So one of the things I do five times a day is get to the gym before 6:30 in the morning, and it just, because if I don't do that, I'll come to my computer and I'll be stuck at my computer for the next, until probably lunchtime. Oh, I've got to go do something, right? So I get to the gym. The other thing I do is that I make sure that I don't do any appointments, or try not to do any appointments outside of like visiting appointments until after 1 p.m. So that means I can actually do my emails and actually eat lunch before I go. And then the other thing I do is that I make sure that I'm home for dinner by 6. So that I always get to sit with my wife and have that moment with her. Even though I might have some other things to do, I just make sure that, and that's a personal health thing too, so that I'm not eating after 6:30. So, I just make sure that I'm present with her at 6 o'clock. So just going back to those basic values we sort of grew up when we, when we weren't allowed to eat dinner in front of the television,
Yeah.
Just going back to basics, but just having dinner at 6. And so those are the things that sort of help me not get so overwhelmed by work and then chasing my tail and making promises at home, because I'm trying to make promises, like you talked about, people pleasing, right? Making promises to my clients and trying to keep everybody in balance when I'm falling apart.
Yeah.
And
so much of what you said is relatively simple too. Like, you're practicing the management of a boundary that you're now teaching other people what the expectations of you are. So if you say, I take appointments between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m., then people know if they're going to schedule an appointment with you, it needs to be between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. I highly doubt on the other side, they're going to say something like, wow, man, can you believe this guy won't take an appointment at 11 o'clock in the morning? Like, they're probably going to say, oh yeah, he only takes appointments between 1 and 4. So we really do, you're absolutely right, Chad. Like, we teach people how to treat us and what to expect of us. And so my rule is, I generally speaking don't take appointments before 10 a.m. because then I have plenty of time in the morning to be able to do the things that I've set the intention for. I also try to be home for dinner every single night, although we do eat in front of the TV sometimes. So maybe I need to shift that expectation. But I think that, you're giving me a prime example, or 3 prime examples of simple things that are boundary management that then speak to our time management. So not only are you teaching people how to treat you and what to expect, you're also enforcing something that helps you manage your time, which then gives you the time to do the other things. And I love that. Awesome. Amanda, that was your bold. I love that. Keep at it. You're only 14 days in. So.
Yeah, that's been an issue for me as a new agent, because being a new agent, you want to say yes, yes, yes to every client and whatever they want. But I've truly, Monday morning, I picked that bold law and really stuck to it. And I've seen a difference in my scheduling and how things are working out for me. And it really does make a difference. And like you say, they're not going to be mad about it. You just give a time frame and set boundaries. And in most cases, they're going to respect that and it's going to be okay.
Absolutely. Kudos to you. Great job following through on your bold law.
If I can, in closing too, Amanda, that's a great one. And, I, having done this for so long, that's something that I had to come to grips with too. But when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And what I put that image or visual for me to make it resonate and more impactful was the no that I was saying was no to my kids. So, you know, having whatever your why is and whatever is important to you, I think that should be the mover of creating that boundary to make it more impactful, and you stick with it.
Absolutely. I just realized we're 4 minutes over. My apologies, Chad.
No, it's okay. It's all good stuff. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time out and spending it with us. For those who are brand new to this forum or this class, how great is that, right? We get a class that's not real estate related, not sales related, but it's just investing back into you guys. So thank you for taking the time and joining us. We love it. Heather, we greatly appreciate you and all that you do. Hopefully we'll get to a point where Heather can come back into the market center too and do stuff in person, which would be fantastic. And we'll get there, I'm sure. And yeah, we look forward to whatever exciting thing that you're going to be discussing in next month. So I'm sure that
Awesome.
Heather will put together a teaser for us and we'll all look forward to it. But have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.